Okay, so this is part two of the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting. Um, Earlier in my first video, I said that this started the whole like UFO flying saucer craze. That's not true. Roswell happened a little bit earlier than this, um, than this report. So I was wrong. I was wrong on that. But I mean, this is definitely one of the early stories that heavily contributed to the flying saucer, flying disc craze for sure. In fact, the 1947 is considered to have been the start of it. So if you haven't seen part one, you want definitely watch that first before you watch this one, because I'm kind of in the middle of the story here. Um, and so let's see here. Um, so Arnold talks about um, talks of possible non-earthly origins on July 7th. So this happened on June 24th, 1947, and I believe Roswell started earlier in June, right? So, um, all right, where were we here? Um, okay. So on July 7th, 1947, two stories came out where Arnold raised the topic of possible extraterrestrial origins, both as his opinion and those who had written to him. In an Associated Press story, Arnold said he had received quantities of fan mail eager to help solve the mystery. No, none of it calling him a screwball. Many of the writers, like a doomsday preacher Arnold spoke of, placed a religious interpretation on his sighting, but others, he said, suggested the discs were visitations from another planet. Arnold added he had purchased a movie camera, which he would now take with him on every flight, hoping to obtain photographic proof of what he had seen. Um, in another story, Arnold was interviewed by the Chicago Times. Um, Kenneth Arnold is not so certain that the strange contraptions are made on this planet. Arnold said he hoped the devices were really the work of the U.S. Army, but he told the Times in a phone conversation, "If our government knows anything about these devices, the people should be told at once. A lot of people out here are very much disturbed. Some think these things may be from another planet, but they aren't harming anyone, and I think it would be the wrong thing to shoot one of them down. If we're even capable of shooting one of these things down, like I really have my doubts on that. But I guess I'll save that for like another video. Like, I think I don't know what to think about like crashed UFOs, and like I don't think we've ever actually shot one down. But I do think that there have been like crashed UFO craft and possibly alien bodies as well. Um, so let's see here. Let's see, where was I here? Um, yeah, and I think it would be wrong to shoot one of them down, even if it can be done. Their high speed would completely wreck them. Arnold, in pointing to the possibility of these discs being from another world, said regardless of their origin, they apparently were traveling to some reachable destination. Whoever controlled them, he said, obviously wasn't trying to hurt anyone. He said discs were making turns so abruptly in rounding peaks that it would have been impossible for human pilots inside to have survived the pressure. That's another thing too. Like they're going so fast and like doing like these crazy maneuvers that how would a person survive in something like that? They wouldn't. They wouldn't be able to. So he too thinks that they are controlled from elsewhere, regardless of whether it's from Mars, Venus, or our own planet. In an Associated Press story from July 19th, Arnold reiterated his belief that if they weren't Army, then they were extraterrestrial. The ex-University of Minnesota swimmer and footballer says he now believes the discs are not from any foreign country. The Army could give the answer if it would. If they don't have the explanation now, they certainly could do something to find out. Could they, though? Could they? If the Army has no explanation, then the discs... Let's see. If the Army has no explanation, the discs must be, and I know this sounds crazy, from another planet or another world. I don't think that sounds crazy at all. Not even close to being crazy. It's not like we're the only life out there anyway. I think it's next to impossible that we're the only, planet or place in the whole universe that has life. I think that's crazy to think. I mean, just because, well, I think that NASA already has evidence for extraterrestrial life, but they're not exactly being public with it. They don't want us to know or whatever, for whatever reasons. In April of 1949, in a skeptical article in the Saturday Evening Post titled "What You Can Believe About Flying Saucers," Arnold was likewise quoted saying, "Since my first observations and report of the so-called flying discs, I have spent a great deal of money and time thoroughly investigating the subject. There is no doubt in my mind but what these objects are aircraft of a strange design and material that is unknown to the civilization of this earth." In 1950, broadcaster Edward Murrow interviewed Arnold, who stated that since June of 1947, he had 3 additional sightings of 9 spacecraft. So he saw them again? Or, okay. Interesting. I'd like to know about those too. Okay. Arnold's account was first featured in a few late newspaper editions on June the 25th, appeared in numerous U.S. and Canadian papers. And some foreign newspapers on June 26th and thereafter, often on the front page, without exception, according to Blocher, the Arnold story was initially related with a serious, even-handled tone. The first reporters to interview Arnold were Nolan Skiff and Bill Beckett of the East Oregonian in Pendleton, Oregon on June 25th. And the first story on the Arnold sighting, written by Beckett, appeared in the newspaper the same day. So starting June 26th and 27th, newspapers first began using the terms flying saucer and flying disc to describe the sighted objects. Thus, the Arnold sighting is credited with giving rise to these popular terms. The actual origin of the terms is somewhat complicated. Jerome Clark cites a 1970 study by Herbert Strentz, who reviewed U.S. newspaper accounts of the Arnold sighting and concluded that the term was probably due to an editor or headline writer. The body of the early Arnold news stories did not use the term flying saucer or flying disc. However, some earlier stories did in fact credit Arnold with using the terms, such as saucer, disc, and pie pan, in describing the shape. So here's the Beckett interview. Years later, Arnold claimed he told Bill Beckett that they flew erratic like a saucer if you skip it across the water. Arnold felt that he had been misquoted since the description referred to the object's motion rather than their shape. Thus, Beckett has often been credited with first using flying saucer and supposedly misquoting Arnold. But the term does not appear in Beckett's early articles. Instead, his first article of June 25th says only, he said he sighted 9 saucer-like aircraft flying in formation. The next day, in a much more detailed article, Beckett wrote, he clung to his story of shiny, flat objects racing over the Cascade Mountains with a peculiar weaving motion like the tail of a Chinese kite. He also described the objects as saucer-like, and their motion like fish flipping in the sun. Arnold described the objects as flat like a pie pan, right? And somewhat bat-shaped. Now, there are sketches of what he believed he saw. So this is like in the thumbnail of part 1 of this of my videos about the Kenneth Arnold sighting. You can see one. It wasn't until June 28th that Beckett first used the term flying disc, but not flying saucer. A review of early newspaper stories indicates that immediately after his sighting, Arnold generally described the object's shape as thin and flat, rounded on the front, but chopped in the back and coming to a point, more or less saucer or disc-like. He also specifically used terms like saucer or saucer-like, disc, pie pan, or pie plate in describing the shape. The motion he generally described as weaving like the tail of a kite and erratic flipping. Gosh, that's so weird. For example, in a surviving recorded radio interview from June 26th of 1947, made by reporter Ted Smith, the United Press correspondent in Pendleton, Oregon, Arnold described them as looking somewhat like a pie plate that was cut in half with a sort of convex triangle in the rear. Sounds like a futuristic spacecraft. It also kind of sounds like the Rhodes UFO photos and sightings. I have a video on that. I did make a video on that one. See, it sounds similar to that one. His motion descriptions were: I noticed to the left of me a chain which looked to me like the tail of a Chinese kite, kind of weaving. They seemed to flip and flash in the sun just like a mirror. They seemed to kind of weave in and out right above the mountaintops. Man, that is crazy. Oh, man. In the weeks that followed Arnold's June 1947 story, at least several hundred reports of similar sightings flooded in from the U.S. and around the world, most of which described saucer-shaped objects. A sighting by the United Airlines crew of another 9 disc-like objects over Idaho on July 4th probably garnered more newspaper coverage than Arnold's original sighting. I wonder if I can, and opened the floodgates of media coverage in the days to follow. So I'm gonna do a video on that Flight 105 UFO sighting too, for sure. That seems like a really big one and related to this. Of course, the most famous UFO event during this period was the Roswell UFO incident. The alleged military recovery of a crashed flying disc, the story of which broke on July 8th of 1947. So that came earlier the same month as the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting. To calm rising public concern, this and other cases were debunked by the military in succeeding days as mistaken sightings of weather balloons. Yeah, sure. Yeah, right. Just before the Roswell story came out, the Army Air Forces in Washington issued a press statement saying they had the matter under investigation and had decided the flying discs definitely were not secret bacteriological weapons designed by some foreign power, new type of Army rockets, or spaceships. Okay. Yeah, definitely check out the Rhodes flying disc photos. Like I said, I did a video on that as well. That was so what's weird is that was July, what was that? July 7th of 1947. So that actually happened a day before Roswell. What? Yeah, cuz yeah. Okay. Uh and then this Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting later in June of night. So 1947, an incredible year for UFO sightings and events, like incidents and encounters, like crazy stuff here in 1947. The whole frickin' year, seems like. So we'll end there, and I'll do a part 3 here soon. So let me know your comments, thoughts below on this particular, story, incident. Love to know what others, think about all of this. And I'll be back with the final part 3 for this here shortly.